It's the start of the new year, and you've set some financial goals, like paying off your student loans, saving for a down payment, or maxing out your IRA. Whatever your goal, how awesome would it feel if you could fast track your progress? It'll take focus and dedication, but with the right strategies, you can supercharge your cash flow and get there faster. Today, we're joined by Justin Brownwoods. He's a financial coach and co-host of The Price of Avocado Toast. Justin not only helps his clients reach their financial goals, but he's also walked the walk himself. After accumulating $220,000 in debt, Justin and his wife Haley decided to rewrite their financial story. In just 18 months, they paid off more than half of their debt and began rebuilding their wealth. And when I say rebuilding, I really mean rebuilding. Before accumulating six figures of debt, they had over $600,000 in the bank. It's a story you don't want to miss, but I'm going to let Justin spill the details in the episode itself. So if you're ready to fast track your 2025 financial goals without selling a kidney, this is the episode for you. It's packed with both tips and inspiration to get you started. I hope you enjoy my conversation with the football-loving, identical twin, and father of three, Justin Brown Woods. You know those moments where you think, I wish I would have learned this in school? Those are the topics that we love to talk about. Join me each week as I interview experts sharing their strategies for solving problems that us young adults will face throughout our 20s and 30s. So what are you waiting for? If you want new episodes about adulting advice every Monday, hit that follow button. We're going to be talking about how to fast track your way to crushing your financial goals, especially in early 2025 right now. A lot of people have set some New Year's resolutions and they're ready to get after it. They want to actually crush this goal. It could be debt. They could be paying off your student loans. It could be saving and investing, anything in that regard. I'm really going to talk about both the tactical and the emotional side of getting serious for a season to really pursue your financial goals. And I feel like you're the perfect sparring partner to have this conversation with because you've done it. And you got an interesting story, getting a windfall of money and then kind of quickly dissipating that money, burying yourself into debt, and then having the journey back out of that and setting yourself up financially like you have today. Do you mind kind of plugging in the details on that story just to set the stage for today's conversation?
Yeah, definitely. So the basic gist of it is that when I was 24, I met my wife. She was 23. We fell, head over heels in love with one another, cupcake lane immediately. And in the really, really early stages of our relationship, almost 3 months into us dating, I received a $600,000 lawsuit payout essentially from my grandmother. She passed away from mesothelioma, and my grandfather filed a lawsuit on her behalf. 24 years old, get $600,000 in a check, just, made out to my name. Well, 2 checks made out to my name. It was pretty wild. And I didn't have any financial education, and my wife, girlfriend at the time, didn't either. And so we kind of just let lifestyle creep happen, and we blew through that money. We went through it in about 3 years and started to rack up a ton of debt. So after we got the check, about 3.5 years later, we had blown through it and gone to $220,000 of debt. Had this kind of pivotal moment we call our pumpkin muffin moment, where we were both teaching. She was 8 months pregnant, and she swings by Costco on the way home. And I get home after a long teaching day, and she says, hey, there's these really good pumpkin muffins in the kitchen. You ought to give them a try. And rather than just be excited that my pregnant wife got a pastry, I was like, hey, we don't have $7 extra in our bank account for you to be spending on muffins. And it was really jolting for us, A, to kind of have this argument like that, but then also to realize, hey, we are now having our big kid careers. We've got plans for a young family that we're starting. We've got to figure this money thing out. We can't continue this cycle that our parents lived as well. And so we started to figure things out. Over the course of about 18 months, we paid off $132,000 of debt,
Wow.
Hammered away at it. Yeah. And so we really decided, there are things we might be comfortable with our money, but debt is one, and particularly credit card debt, that just isn't going to serve us well. And we got serious and intentional and really started to hammer away out of it. So that's kind of the gist of our story and how we became kind of personal finance adjacent.
Yeah, and you guys have done an amazing job up until this point. And I always loved when you talked about the pumpkin muffin story too, because I felt the emotion behind that story when you share it, because I know you and Haley both And you guys, I can't imagine, fight a whole lot, if any at all.
Not at all.
And it's crazy to have a jarring moment like that and then quickly recognize this isn't about you and I. We need to team up, and this is something bigger than us. This is this debt in the situation that we're getting into. And I loved that you took a moment like that and made it into a positive outcome and got serious and started to dig back out of this hole. It's a really, really cool story.
It's something I think we talk a lot about too with clients when we're working through the debt-free journey or any type of financial goal. Your why, as everybody knows, has to be so deep. It has to be so incredibly personal. And it can't simply just be, I don't like debt, right? Or I want this financial marker or this status symbol. It has to be something that really is at the core of who you are as a human. And I think for Haley and I, it was, we don't fight like that. That's not our relationship, and that's not who we're going to be as parents. And when you can tie it to some of those core values of partnership and parenthood, it really does ignite kind of this machine that just says, okay, enough's enough, and we're going to get rolling.
Yeah, because it's one thing to dig yourself out of $220,000 of debt. It's another thing to make sure you stay away from debt all in the future. I think relevant to like losing weight. And you know, so many people that have buckled down for a year, they lost a ton of weight only to a few years later put that weight back on because their why wasn't deep enough. And they didn't kind of root themselves in the larger story that what they really wanted to reinforce on why they're going throughout this journey. So let's table that. I definitely think we're going to be talking a little bit more about the emotional side and keeping things motivated throughout the process. But let's talk a little bit more tactical now. I want to really talk through fast tracking. I mean, putting down $113,000 in debt over, what did you say, 18 months that's a big slug. And you did a whole lot of things to dump some fuel on the fire in that situation. So I kind of see fast tracking as two parts here, both increasing your income and decreasing your expenses. In your opinion, which did you feel like was the easier of the two in your own personal journey?
I think for us, it was definitely decreasing expenses. We had just built this lifestyle that absolutely was not obtainable for us. And we live in California in a really high cost of living area. So we're kind of always going to butt up against some of those natural large expenses like housing, maybe transportation or groceries. But there were other places that we were just spending way too much. I mean, we were dining out to the tune of like $1,000 a month between just the two of us. And we were on teachers' salaries. It just wasn't efficient at all. And we weren't budgeting. We weren't tracking our expenses. So naturally starting those things helped us decrease our expenses because it was like, wait, why are we spending so much going out wine tasting when it's not serving our goals? Or why are we going to breakfast both days of the weekend when if we just cut once, there's probably close to $150, $200 a month in savings, right? It was really easy to just see, hey, if we cut a few things, we're going to start to really see some momentum here. So decreasing our expenses was probably the bigger catalyst for us. But increasing income also did help. I mean, I picked up a side job on top of teaching where I was bartending and serving pizzas at night. And that really helped as well because that could all go towards our debt payoff.
Yeah, let's talk about increasing income. What was the line of thinking? Why did you choose the bartending and the pizza route versus some other kind of side job? Were there factors that you considered, or was there just an opportunity on the table and you jumped on it in order to do something to help your family out?
Yeah, selfishly, it was at a restaurant that I had worked at previously as a manager. So I knew that I was kind of the golden child. So like returning, I was going to get whatever shift I wanted. The managers were going to make it work because they knew I was good at the job. And the hours just worked really well with teaching. My shifts didn't start until about 5:30. So I could leave my teaching job, swing by the house really quick, kiss Haley and the baby, change into my apron and non-slip shoes, and then go get behind the bar for a couple hours. The restaurant closed at like 9 or 10, giving whether it was the weekend or weekday. So it wasn't a super late night thing. And it was a pizzeria / wine bar. So it wasn't like bartending mixed drinks. It was just pouring wine. Wine's, kind of got this air of a little bit of bougie to it. So tips were a little bit better. So that's what kind of made that decision is I knew that I wasn't going to be out super late and I was going to get any shift I wanted, basically.
How long did you maintain that job for? And was that a conversation you had with Haley prior? I mean, you're also a parent, so there's some parental responsibility that really probably, I'm guessing, fell on Haley if you were doing weeknights at the pizzeria and wine bar. Did you guys set kind of a strategy in place on, okay, I'm going to start and I'm going to work through this amount of time or hit this amount of goal, or was it a little bit more fluid?
It was pretty fluid. Honestly, we just said, hey, this is an opportunity for us to start to close that gap and to really spike this thing. So let's just get in. Let's just dive into it and burn out the tires until we can't. And I kept that up, I think, for just about 18 months until we ended up moving and we were, too far away to commute 2.5 hours to a restaurant job. But there wasn't really a conversation of how are we going to manage this? Is it when we hit a certain goal or a certain number? It was kind of like, hey, now's the time. Let's do this now while we can. And this is, at this point, 6 years ago. So a little bit more energy, a few less kids, right? I'm like, okay, I can keep this momentum for a little bit longer.
Do you feel like you could do that again? I know you and Haley have joked about getting serious again, about paying the rest of the student loans on and kind of having that itch. Do you see a world where you ever pick up a second job again like that?
I could see it just because I'm kind of a worker bee. I have the hustle bone. That's what I say. Like, it's just in there. Haley's got it as well. And every now and then we just kind of say like, man, content would be pretty wild if we just hammered this for a year. Like, we get some good content out of this. And then we think, maybe now's not the time. But yeah, I definitely think about it every now and then. Like, I could just do it. In fact, actually, that happened recently. A brewery that I love to go to and that my twin brother kind of moonlit as a bartender and security guard at because we liked their beer and we wanted the discount. They opened a second location. And so I told Haley, I'm going to apply for their on-call bartending spot so that if like one day a month somebody needs a shift covered, I can hop in. And went to the interview and she's like, actually, we want you every Sunday from 12 to 8. I was like, well, like, I love the idea, but I don't think I can commit to that right now with my coaching, financial coaching. But who knows? In the very near future, I might go, sling some beers and hammer out this debt. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Let's keep talking about your hustle bone because you're a hustler and you actually picked up kind of a side hustle, Facebook Marketplace selling. And I know it sounds like you're a pro at this and you started to, let's just call it liquidate a ton of unuseful things sitting around your house. How did that start? Were you somebody that had dabbled in Facebook Marketplace selling before, or was it something that you just heard of and you're like, let's jump on this and act on it?
I hadn't really ever sold on Facebook Marketplace, and prior to that, not on eBay or Craigslist. But I realized, hey, there is so much in our house that we have that just doesn't serve us. And I was kind of almost feeling like this cluttering factor as well. It wasn't even just that I could make some money off some of this stuff. It was like, this is just clouding my life and I want it out of our space. And so I kind of like to tell Haley, we developed our kind of 3-step method for deciding whether or not something's going on Facebook Marketplace through our debt-free journey. And it was, the first step is this something we've used in the last 6 months? And if it was not, then we were going to go to step 2. And step 2 is, have I not used it because it is holiday specific or family memento, or I just haven't used it? And if you haven't used it because of whatever reason, then you go to step 3, which is, what's the value number I put on this? And if I had this item and that value of cash sitting on the table, which would I grab first? And just this kind of really simple process made it so much easier for me to clear things out and say, okay, I haven't used this and it's not for my family or holiday specific. What's the value I'd put on this? Do I want that money instead? Absolutely. It was wild, some of the things I sold. I sold old blender bottles from our time as like workout junkies. I sold a hiking backpack for parent and kid that my sister gave us that she was done using, but I never ended up using. I'm like, I'm not a hiker. That's not what I do. I'm going to flip this, sis, and make some money on it. I told you the story of me selling the original podcast equipment that my brother sold to me, flipped that and made some money. So I've sold so many random things on Facebook Marketplace, but I've really enjoyed it because it's twofold. I'm tackling a financial goal and I'm decluttering our home. Yes. And that to me just gives me a little bit more clarity, a little bit more kind of mental space freed up to feel like we're moving in the right direction.
Everyone listening knows that I'm a huge lover of Facebook Marketplace. It's a side hustle of mine actually as well. I love to sell stuff that I both own and or things that I find for other people. Like my girlfriend's parents, every single time they visit me, bring a box or two of things that they're like, yep, can you sell this for me? And it's just so fun. I love stimulating the secondhand economy and helping people get, less expensive things that are out there. We're so big into consumerism right now. And so many people have amazing things sitting around their house that if they list it on Marketplace, it could be a win-win for everybody because you make a little bit of money, somebody gets something at half the price or a third of the price that they would have bought new, and we're not filling the landfill up with unnecessary garbage. So I'm a big fan of it. It's easy to start. You also mentioned Craigslist and eBay. Do you do any shipping, or do you you're staying local for the most part?
Yeah, just local. I mean, it makes it so easy to just do like a porch pickup and have somebody come by. And it's really convenient as a parent too. You know, we get clouded as parents with my kid needs this and my kid needs that, and it's got to be the best and it's got to be brand new. And it simply doesn't. You know, I've scored some really cool things for our girls on there that are great. You know, we got a Frozen bike that is well loved, but my daughter, all she sees is Elsa. And she's like, my Elsa bike, my Elsa bike. And that's what matters. It was like $20, way cheaper than I would have gotten a brand new bike for it, and it serves her great. And so I'm a big fan of Facebook Marketplace. I think our tally, last time I checked, which was a couple months ago, it was like $16,000 that we had ended up selling on Facebook Marketplace. Yeah, I mean, like a decent
That's big
chunk.
money.
Yeah, a decent chunk for sure.
You also went ahead and maybe reverse some of the decisions from the purchases that you made whenever you hit that big windfall of money. I believe you, let's call it, downsized your car. Is that correct?
Yeah, 5 days after our daughter was born, I sold a paid-off vehicle that I loved, absolutely loved it, but I knew that it was going to get us a quick win to start paying off some of the higher interest debt like credit card. Yeah, 5 days after she was born, I met a guy at my bank and sold him my 2016 RAV4 that was only a couple years old with 20,000 miles or something, super small. And it was great. He said, I'm going to pay you full price. I'm not going to haggle you down because you just had a kid. And I was like, thanks, man. I appreciate it. But yeah, ended up selling that and bought, not a beater. It was a couple $1,000s, I think maybe $5,000 for this Honda Civic that did its job. But that space, it was about $11,000 that it was the gap, was able to go towards our credit card debt. And that is what finalized our credit card debt. Actually, we had $27,000 to start. And we had at that point tackled $16,000. Unfortunately, by pulling out from my Roth, which I do not recommend. That was unfortunately one thing we did on the journey that Haley and I don't recommend to anybody and would totally probably take back if we could. Although Haley does like to say that it at least did start our journey and we kind of learned that lesson. So sometimes lessons learned are worth it as well. But that $11,000 from the car ended up tackling all the credit card debt so we could immediately get into the student loans. And so that felt really good to hammer that out pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think your line of thinking is right there on the IRA piece to it, or withdrawing from that. Of course, you can never put it back in there. And I'm sure you've done some calculations on how much that would have been if you left it there for 40 years. But at the same front, too, it is important to get some early wins. Selling your more expensive car and buying a cheaper one, I think, was a genius idea. Do you have those conversations with your coaching clients as well? Or how do you manufacture some of these early wins to start building momentum?
Yeah, that's a big one, unfortunately. Cars are a space where a lot of people get caught into an uncomfortable position financially. And that's one of the first places that we really can identify and say, let's talk about the goals for your family and whether or not this vehicle's serving that purpose for y'all. And Haley had some clients who almost a few weeks into their time together, they said, this truck is not the one for us. This doesn't feel super great having this high payment and we want to get into something different. And that was a pretty quick win on their journey that helped them move the needle forward, lighten the burden monthly of expenses, and then also tackle debt. So it's kind of twofold, right? You're taking away a car payment. In our situation, the car was paid off, but you're taking off a car payment and maybe then also throwing some at debt. So you get these kind of double-sided wins that feel really good on the journey. So cars is a place that we really do look at pretty quickly with clients because some of these payments are just astronomical. Oh my gosh, just astronomical. And it's unfortunate because people need a reliable vehicle. Our country doesn't do a great job with public transportation in every major city. And so some folks simply say, like, I have to have a vehicle to commute, and it's got to be something that can get me from A to B safely. Like, A to B is good, yes, but we can't be breaking down or at risk of breaking down every few months. I just wish it didn't come at the cost of some of these car payments. $800, $900, over $1,000 for a car payment is just astronomical, and we can do so much good with our money if we didn't have to pay that. So cars are definitely one of the first places we look.
Yeah, I'm coaching a buddy through his debt payoff journey right now too. And it's crazy and really fascinating kind of talking to him and listening to how he thinks through some of these decisions. And the car payment was one that I immediately questioned. I'm just curious. I'm scratching the surface there and just, why did you make that decision? Are you comfortable with that decision? Do you feel like that car payment is sustainable for you? And I do think it's semi-predatory, some of these auto financiers that are out there making it seem like $1,000 car payment is normal. and totally sustainable. And I don't think it's crazy for people to not recognize that there are alternatives like the used car market that are $150, $200 a month for some of these car payments. Maybe even you have enough to just pay in full on something. And it's just incredible what it will do to let go of a large car payment like that, how that will free up cash flow. And once you start freeing up cash flow, paying down existing debt, all of a sudden you lose another debt payment out there and it snowballs fast in a positive way. And all of a sudden you're coming up with an extra $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month just by letting go of something like a large car payment.
A lot of people want to move the needle by doing really small things. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't identify the subscriptions that we have that maybe we're not using, or identifying how much we're going to get coffee and whether or not we can maybe change some of those habits. But realistically, that's not going to move the needle enough to tackle some of these debts or some of these bigger issues. Like, we really have to go at some of the big things first. So we're looking at housing, we're looking at transportation, we're looking at groceries or dining out. Like, those are the big three Haley and I typically see when we're coaching with people that are going to give us the most wiggle room, right? That's not to say that you can't change childcare and have some wins, or cut that cord, right? Cut that streaming subscription that's going to give you a little bit, but it's generally not going to give you the massive amounts that we're going to see. And cars, yeah, they're just one of those big ones.
How did you guys approach the budgeting kind of expense reduction exercise? Did you guys immediately cut everything and then really start talking through like we're only adding things back in? Or was it more meticulous and every month you kind of analyze what you were spending on and picked a thing or two to pull out?
We cut just about everything. So I'm really impressed, actually. At the time that we were on our debt payoff journey, my teaching salary, I was bringing home $2,400 a month as an educator. Haley was bringing home, I think, about $3,300, or maybe it was $36. I think it was somewhere right in there. Mine was a little bit lower because I was carrying the family's health insurance through my district. So that was our total income, and expenses we had dropped to, I think, $5,500, $5,600, somewhere right around there. Our mortgage was $2,200, and then other aspects of life like groceries, car insurance, phone bill, things like that is what got us a little bit higher. But we cut just about everything. The only stream, or the only kind of thing we had at the time, was Netflix. We didn't have anything else. We eventually ended up adding back in Sling TV, which I think was like $40 a month at the time. But Haley cut lashes, nails, all of that stuff. We weren't dining out at all. So we literally cut it to zero. And this is actually the biggest win that we've set on the journey. Cutting our dining out by so much forced us to cook more at home, forcing us to eat dinner as a family more. And now every single night we eat dinner at the table as a family with our 3 young kids. And Haley and I never had that growing up. It was very much so single parent. If mom's making what we have, there's a couple times we might eat at the table. Many nights, though, we're kind of like all over the place or on TV trays, right? Just trying to survive. Not for us. Like, we're very intentional about sitting as a family and eating at the table. And that was like one of the best things to come from slashing that dining out budget. I mean, it's just been absolutely the best. We love it. But yeah, we really cut just about everything out. Like, we're pretty impressed with what we were able to cut things down to.
Yeah, I think us as humans, whenever we're slashing or thinking about eliminating expenses, of course, only think about the negative impact that that's going to have on our life. But oftentimes I do hear of these stories, like how it opened up a space for family mealtime and how important that's been to you now. Like, it does create space and opportunity. And I recently talked with Jill Sirianni. I think you guys had her on the show recently as well. And we talked about creative frugality, and sometimes being forced into this decision-making process, you actually find there's some really beautiful things that come out of it. So we talked about her needing to have more affordable housing and how she found tiny living and all of the amazing benefits that came from living in an RV with her husband during that time. And once again, you never really think about some of the positives that might come out of a decision like this, but it's cool and it's so beautiful that you guys found family mealtime, because I have many memories from sitting around the kitchen table with my family. And I'm so glad that my parents were frugal in that area too, and that it wasn't just throw the meal on the table that we picked up from the local restaurant, everybody grab a plate when you're ready, and we never really got that intentional time. I mean, there's so many times where I remember having deep conversations with my parents, or even simple conversations with my whole family about how the day is going. And those are some beautiful moments.
Yeah, we every night go around and kind of ask one person in the family, what was your favorite part of today? And it's just become this really great thing for our family. And our kids are young. I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. So maybe it's not always particularly deep, but I'm sure you can reminisce on this, like some of the stories or some of the funny things. I mean, these are memories my wife and I are going to carry forever. I'm always going to remember how my daughters asked, can they be excused from the table? Because it's so funny to me the way they ask now, right? I'm always going to remember these dorky little toddlers asking to be at the table, or, you know, my daughters wanting to play the animal guessing game once our plates are cleared. Just these really sweet, tender moments that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And I love the way you're framing that. You know, we look at things from a deprivation lens of like, what am I missing out on? What do I not get anymore? Rather than what are we gaining from doing this? And it doesn't have to be the monetary gain. There's so many other gains we can find and so many other positives to take away from it.
That's cool, man. Any stone we left unturned in terms of the tactical piece to fast tracking? If not, let's start talking about the emotional, motivational side to it.
One of the things that's just on top of mind, because Haley and I talked about it yesterday, when you're fast tracking any type of financial goal, pay yourself or the goal first. You have to have that as part of the step, because you've probably set some type of pattern or some type of behavior that says if money's in my account, I can spend it or do what I want with it. But if you earmark it immediately towards a goal and maybe even send it towards that goal immediately, you can't do that. Haley and I sometimes do like to say that there's this forced deprivation at times that will get you where you need to go. And it doesn't need to be a negative thing. It can say, I'm sending the $300 towards this debt payoff goal, or I'm sending the money towards our savings emergency fund immediately, rather than waiting to the end of the paycheck cycle and seeing what we have left to send. You have to do it first. It's part of the journey, and it's part of the behavior pattern and the mindset that just that money is going somewhere and I don't get to use it.
Do you recommend automation for that, or do you prefer that clients manually go about doing this?
It's really whatever works for clients, right? I have a client who loves the automation style, and so I'm like, great, this is awesome. You know, you've got the perfect percentage from your paycheck that you know which account it needs to get sent to. Others, they've been so hands-off from their finances for so long that I actually want them really hands-on. I want the money coming into an account, and I want us to walk and talk through it so that they can say, okay, now I'm going to actively do this. And the hope is that eventually we'll get to the automation stage, things are running in the background for them, and they're just enjoying life. But sometimes we need to say, hey, we're going to live in this for a little bit and actually get into some of this before we're going to do that part.
Fair. So let's switch gears and talk the emotional side to things and really motivation. And this can be an up and down roller coaster. This is a phrase that you've rang true in my head for the last week as I started doing some research on you. And that's season for a reason. Like any of these goals, I think, need to have sustainability to them. And I think part or one of the elements of sustainability might be a period where you get really focused, hyper-focused on this particular goal, but you have to remind yourself that this is a season for a reason, and or this is something that you're doing for a period of time and there's relief at the end of the tunnel. Is that fair?
When we set a goal for ourselves, we think that it's just going to continue ad nauseum, right? And really when we can say, hey, this isn't a season of life for me where I'm going to be hustling, or this is a season of life for us where we're going to scale back and be a bit more intentional or be a bit frugal or whatever it may be. If you can kind of compartmentalize it and say, like, this is a season of our life and this is the way we want this season to look, you know that the future looks maybe a different way. And you can always pivot and get excited about that as well. But it's when we kind of just consider that, well, this is my life now, and we think it's just going to continue forever, that we burn out and we lose steam, and then we binge or we crash or whatever it may be.
Even before we pressed record, you were telling me you take 2 weeks off at the end of the year, and you also encourage your clients to do that as well. And this is probably not like a great period of time for debt payoff. Like, sure, if you want to continue some things, go for it, but there should also be like mini breaks throughout the seasons as well. You know, take a week or two off, build that into the system, know that that's something that you promised yourself, even with the weight loss journey too. Like if you get sick, like just take a week. Let the nutrition go for a second, take off the 6 days a week working out program, just give yourself a week. So maybe it's like intentionally building in one period of time that you will shut down or take off or let off the reins a little bit. And then maybe a week or two of like emergency PTO or something where like, hey, something comes up, an emergency happens, a parent passes away, or a huge expense popped up that you weren't expecting, that's okay. We're really talking about the long journey here, not necessarily this short or immediate journey that you're on.
We tell clients the program length that we're working together is so small compared to your entire financial journey that happens beyond us. We're looking at what do the decades look like, not what do the months look like, right? And here's one of the great examples I love to give people when we're talking about moving, whether you're going from renting to owning or just renting to renting, whatever it may be. How often do those boxes stay in the house for a little bit longer, right? How hard is it to navigate finding the frying pan and then going and finding the dried basil and then remembering where you put the rubber spatula? Oh, but that's in a different box that's buried in the garage. I'm not going to tell somebody, hey, your savings rate was a little low in October. What happened? Oh, yeah, you guys moved a house. Like, that's the month where I will tell a client, take a break. Obviously, I want you to be intentional. I want you just like dining out at every steakhouse every single night. But if y'all are grabbing pizza a little bit more often to just try and get through while you're unpacking, that's going to be this month. We might have to pause a little bit, and that's okay. We're going to pick it back up. I mean, just this morning, we sent a newsletter out telling our clients, now is not the time for us to talk to you about debt payoff. It's simply not. But in January, we are going to talk to you again about it. In just 2 short weeks, we're going to come back around to it. Right now, enjoy the time with your family. Have a few more extra cookies and glasses of eggnog. But be ready for January because we're going to get back into it. But sometimes we need that reminder of like, oh yeah, just 2 short weeks. Or like you said, just a week away from the gym where I'm actually resting and recovering is going to help me in the future start to get back on the train a little bit sooner.
So outside of planned and unplanned time off, were there any other ways that you stayed motivated throughout your debt payoff journey? Is there reward systems that you built in whenever one of the snowballs fell, or anything that you remember or tactic that you used that was really helpful?
Thinking back to like, what did these things look like when we were on this journey? So we're very much so visual people. So we built the graphic where we were crossing out debts as we're going through, and that felt really good. And it was, poster sized paper, former teachers, we got markers and we're doing it all. It was great. So that was one. We inserted things back into the budget as we got a little bit more ahead. So we started to maybe get a massage a little bit more often or put nails back in the budget. I remember when Haley got her lash appointment back into the budget. She's like, this is great. Like, I feel so bougie and good. And it was just awesome. So that was another one that really helped. And this may be changing the podcast towards the explicit version. So I'll try not to be explicit, but we like to say that like when finances get better, everything in a relationship can get better. And so you start having a little bit more of these intimate moments with your partner where the financial stress isn't a burden. And that can really feel good too, because you're reconnecting with your partner. You're having fun as adults and you're not feeling the stress of, well, crap, like I got to pay that bill, or I'm worried about this debt, or I hope they don't call me tomorrow. You're just able to be present and be intimate with your partner. And so that was really fun too, remembering like, oh yeah, like we start to feel a little bit lighter. There's a little bit more kind of swag to your walk when you're tackling some goals.
No joke, man, though. If I'm feeling the lack of intimacy in my relationship, like a hack that I have found now that I've been in a long-term relationship with Gabby is like, what is she stressed about and how can I relieve that stress? Because I know when she's not feeling stressed,
yes,
good things might happen here. So I think it's a great strategy. Let's get rid of the financial stress. Let's start changing this life or the storyline around a little bit. And I think you're going to probably benefit on the other side as well.
We know if somebody's not feeling super great about their body, there's some, physical stress or strain or some tension. It's the exact same thing with finances. If we're not feeling particularly good about our money or we're feeling stressed from that, we just don't feel as ready to receive or give love or whatever that might look like for your relationship, right? We're just carrying so much of that low-level tension, and it's just not healthy for us.
I love your relationship with Haley too. And I heard you on a podcast talking about how you find it sexy that she's the breadwinner of the relationship. Like you break a lot of the gender norms or gender roles that are in there. Like it's kind of cool to have a partner out there that's crushing it, that's super excited, and that you're kind of the Robin to the Batman in this situation, and you're supporting her and helping grow the business and whatnot. It's fucking cool, man. My girlfriend's crushing it as well. And like you, find it really sexy that she's out there, putting up big bucks in her career.
I never really had that kind of male ego of like, I need to be the breadwinner, but I always felt like I was putting myself in this man box of like, I need to solve all our family's problems. And the moment I gave that away, it was so liberating. It was so empowering, right? And now my daughters get to see their mom, who's a badass. Like, I just think it's so cool. And Haley, has people tell her this often. Like, what you're doing is really impressive, Haley. And the way you managed to grow this business with little kids at home is so amazing. I remember back to her building the business and how she had to time it up with our kids' nap schedules. And I'm thinking, I can't believe she managed this. But it's so cool to me. And I think it's sexy. I think it's awesome. A sugar mama is not a bad thing for me when I'm the only one, enjoying the fruits of that labor. It's great.
That's cool, man. Any other advice on people that are in relationships, wanting to get serious about their financial goals? How do they communicate and get their partner on board with some of these things?
So many of us are afraid to be vulnerable with our partner because we're afraid to be truly seen for who we are. All of our faults, all of our missteps, all of our successes. When we're on a financial journey, the numbers don't lie. If we can be honest with a partner and say, hey, I really want you as my teammate in this. Like, I really need help. I work better with a team, whatever it may be. When we can strip that away and just be fully vulnerable like that, I find that most relationships want that. Most people are with their partner because they want to be a partner. They want to be a teammate. And naming that and just saying that openly is the start to really helping people. And then the other aspect of that is, as you know, in any good relationship, we can't be always pointing the finger. So if we have issues with finances, it's okay to name them. It's okay to say, like, I'm worried about this or I'm worried about that. But when we do it from a way that's maybe condescending or pointing the finger, all it is going to do is cause us to shut down. So we really have to find the right language. And that takes practice. Right? It took practice for Haley and I to figure out, like, oh, that was uncomfortable for you the way I said that, or that was uncomfortable for me to hear that from you like that. And as long as we name it and say that and remember, hey, we're a team here, we can always redirect and find the right language we want to use moving forward. But it's when we don't have those conversations, when we don't practice that muscle, that things blow up. It's kind of that hard thing of like, you got to just do it and get through it early on so that it doesn't become a bigger issue that boils over.
Well said, man. I am so stoked to have you on the podcast, man. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. You are also creating really cool conversations with your partner, Haley, over at your own podcast, Price of Avocado Toast. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what your podcast is all about?
Yeah, definitely. We started our podcast right in the middle of our debt-free journey. We realized we were burning our family out by talking about it so much. So we figured, let's just talk into the void. And it actually became something that people wanted to listen to, which was really cool and made us feel really good. So we share kind of strategies, tools, and tips on the debt-free journey and figuring out how to do that thing a little bit better. And we also like to think that we're helping the younger versions of ourselves who might fall into a really big windfall not make those same mistakes. On top of that, much like you, we bring on folks in the personal finance community to share their expertise, share some things that maybe they're excited about, they're passionate about, so that we can help others and also selfishly learn a little bit ourselves. Haley and I really love to just bring brilliant people on and kind of steal some things. We're like, oh, that's really good. I'm taking that. It makes us better coaches. It makes us better partners. It makes us better parents, all of those things. So yeah, our podcast, Price of Avocado Toast, anywhere you're listening to this show, we drop episodes every Wednesday.
Yeah, and I really love the vulnerability. You guys share openly about a lot of numbers. So, most recently, if you're interested in how much it costs to go to Disneyland, you guys did the whole breakdown on how much it cost you. I loved it. I'm glad you guys gave us the tee up for like, this is what we were expecting and this is what it was. And this is what we would purchase or double down on again. And this is what we would let go of next time. I thought the conversation between you two about, the Disneyland cost was really interesting and fascinating.
Yeah, it was really fun to look back on it afterwards and say, okay, like where do we fall with that spending? What do we think? And it was really cool to just say, okay, lesson learned. And now we're going to move forward. We got 2 other kids that will go to Disneyland in the future and we'll pivot and hopefully do it right again.
Justin, final question for you. If you had the opportunity to teach a 16-week class to a group of graduating college seniors on a topic that isn't normally covered in the classroom, what would you teach and how would you teach it?
This is such an interesting thing on a personal finance conversation, but I would teach the use, strategies, and successes of gameplay in everyday life / like education. I believe that gameplay and the strategies of gameplay make life so much more fun and they make life so much more enjoyable. And there's this really weird thing we do when we become adults that we say games just can't be fun anymore. We can't be vulnerable. We can't be funny. We can't be silly. We can't be fantastical, whatever it might be. We have to be adults. We have to be serious. And I just don't think that's how life should be lived. So I would totally teach gameplay strategies and how to build them into your everyday life. Or if I was teaching, graduate students that were maybe going to be going into education, how to build them into your classroom.
Yeah, I found that really interesting. You talked about that a little bit in your LinkedIn description, and I was kind of curious what that was. Do you have a practical example on how somebody, like how an adult approaches something and with gameplay, how they might approach it differently?
Thinking immediately of like the debt payoff journey is some of those gameplay strategies of the reward system, right? Whether the reward system is coloring on a sheet of paper or giving yourself some little motivation or treat, leveling up on certain apps or certain things that we do. Those are all just gameplay strategies that get people more invested into those things. So it's things like that that I think you can kind of tweak and build into your life, but I would couple them with storytelling. Create a narrative, create some wild narrative that you are, Sir Justin of personal Financeville and you're, I don't know, doing some type of journey or quest, whatever it may be. Things like that are goofy and fun, and we're allowed to have fun even as adults. So that's how I would do it. In education, I built an entire classroom that was a blend of like Dungeons and Dragons meets Magic the Gathering. I had gameplay cards. I didn't test. We had monster battles. Like it was a whole thing. And it was the most successful education year I've had as a teacher.
Shoot, man, you got my wheels spinning right now. Like every loan could be a different character that has a quest attached to it. I mean, there are so many possibilities. And I could imagine, especially with doing this journey with somebody else, how you could create like this fun, awesome, amazing experience around a goal that you really want to accomplish. That's genius.
When you said that, there was somebody who was on Etsy selling kind of like a roll and save where you roll a die each day and kind of tuck that aside into an envelope. And at the end of the month, you see how much you've gotten, right? And you put that towards your savings, things like that. Like that's a gameplay strategy. And it gets people just a little bit more excited than saying, I'm moving $5 into my savings. Wah, wah. Like, no, $5. Heck yeah. Like, let's celebrate. Let's ring a bell. Let's do something. I don't know.
Well, Justin, this was a pleasure. I really enjoyed the conversation and hopefully looking forward to more conversations between the two of us.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Justin. I appreciate you, man.
Thanks for listening to the episode. As always, I appreciate your kind words. If you want to leave us a rating and review on your podcast player right now, that would absolutely make my day. If you want to find episode show notes, our blog, and other great resources, head over to tsirpodcast.com. If you have follow-up questions, an idea for a future episode, or just want to say hi, we have a contact form on our website, and those messages go straight into my inbox, and I promise you, I will reply. But all right, guys, I really appreciate you tuning in. I love you all, and you're not alone. Let's keep making it through our struggles together.